to the current circumstances, no one is allowed to go out really, me included. That is why all I can do is stay at home and binge watch movies. But even if I had the choice to go out, I would still stay at home and binge watch movies. But that's not the point. The point is I've watched a lot of Studio Ghibli movies for the past few days, and I wanted to make a list about my 5 favorite Studio Ghibli movies. Starting off at number 5 is Laputa Castle in the Sky. This is Hayao Miyazaki's first film and his first collaboration with Joe Hisaishi. Joe Hisaishi is a longtime collaborator with Hayao Miyazaki who would go on to compose a lot of the music for his movie. And I think Joe Hisaishi really understands the style and what Hayao Miyazaki is going for, because his music always fits the movie that he's working on so perfectly. This movie has a lot of steampunk art design, and it also deals with a lot of themes that you would usually find in steampunk fiction. So this movie can be considered as a steampunk movie, which really isn't something that Studio Ghibli does a lot. In fact, this is the only steampunk movie that Studio Ghibli has done. Howl's Moving Castle had a bit of steampunk elements in it, especially the design of the castle itself, but not to the extent of this movie. This movie is pretty much steampunk all the way. And I like the puppy love in this movie because the love between the two kids in this movie are just so innocent, and puppy love is very endearing to me when done right. The pirate characters in this movie are very endearing too. They are totally in love with their pirate lifestyle and they do not want to change at all. And I love that. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be a pirate. What's better than being a pirate? Being a pirate in the sky. This movie takes place a lot in the sky, and you really get to see the clouds and the birds and the blue sky, and it's very beautiful, and it's the only Studio Ghibli movie to take place so much in the sky. Also, this is the first Hayao Miyazaki movie working under Studio Ghibli, and that is why this is Miyazaki at his purest, most rawest form. Wait, is it a word? Is rawest a word, or is it most raw? And number 4 is My Neighbor Totoro. This is the kind of movie that you want to show your kids, to introduce them to Studio Ghibli or just Japanese animation in general. You don't want to show them something like Princess Mononoke because they might not be able to sleep at night. But even if they do, more importantly, they may not be able to grasp the central themes of that movie because it's more complex. But in a movie like My Neighbor Totoro, the messages are very straightforward. It's about family, it's about love, it's about trust. These messages are simple but very important, and I think they can teach children a lot. This movie also evokes a childlike sense of wonder, and I believe kids will be transfixed while watching this movie. I myself was turned back to a kid again when I was watching this movie. And I still feel the childlike sense of wonder that I felt when I was a kid when I was watching this movie. This movie is endlessly imaginative. When it comes to the imagery that you see on screen, it's extremely imaginative, and it's going to evoke imagination. At number 3 is Kiki's Delivery Service. This movie deals a lot with wizardry. It's about witches and wizards, and as someone who read all of the Harry Potter books and watched all of the Harry Potter movies, I really appreciate anything that has to do with wizard if it's good, and this is good. This is something like Studio Ghibli's take on the wizard universe. And a lot of the wizard elements in this movie especially caught my attention and really attracted me to this film. But more than the witch elements is the emotions and the heart of this film. This film has a very cool message that is really hard to find in kids' movies. The message of this film is that if you sometimes you get a roadblock, especially for an artist, if somehow you can't get to finish a painting or you can't finish a movie, sometimes it's better to take a break and maybe just go on a holiday or something and let the juices flow back into your head. This is a very uncommon message in a kids movie, but I really appreciate it because as someone who likes movies myself, I really connect with the message that this movie is trying to say, sometimes just take a break. The main character in this movie, Kiki, is very sympathetic. She's a very kind-hearted girl, and she goes through a lot of things in this movie, and this movie takes us through her journey with a very nice flow. And the movie also ends very beautifully, and I'm not going to spoil the ending here, but I just think that that ending is just perfect. And number 2 is Grave of the Fireflies. Grave of the Fireflies is not a Miyazaki film, although it is a Studio Ghibli film. It's by Isao Takahata, and it definitely has a very different tone from Miyazaki's films. For one, this film is very depressing, and it doesn't have that fantasy setting that Miyazaki likes to make. It doesn't have those whimsical moments that you would expect for a Miyazaki film. This film is very realistic, and it deals with very heavy subject matter. It's about war, and it's about the casualties of war and why war is bad. And you really get to see the victims of war in this movie, and you really get to sympathize with them. And it gets very depressing very quickly. And this movie moved me to tears, although it's in animation form and everything looks fake. Obviously, it's in animation, but you connect with these characters beyond a visual level. You connect with them on an emotional level, because these characters, they are written in such a realistic way. This is a very sad movie, but it's also a very important movie. You may not enjoy watching this movie, but it's important for everyone to watch. At number 1, my absolute favorite Studio Ghibli movie is Spirited Away. Spirited Away, I think, is a lot of people's favorite Studio Ghibli movie, because the beauty leaks out of every frame in this movie. Every single frame is so painstakingly crafted, because in animation everything has to be created, the blink of an eye or a falling leaf, and everything is hand drawn in this film, and it just comes off as so beautiful. There's just beauty leaking out of every frame, and there's so much visual detail packed into every frame when it comes to the backgrounds or even the foregrounds. So much things to see here, and you can watch this movie once and twice and even third or fourth time, and you will still discover something new in every frame every time. That's how much visual detail that goes into every single frame, and I really admire and respect the people behind this movie, because it takes a lot of effort to make something as detailed as this. But the result is a world that is so memorable, it's going to stay in your head for a very, very long time, and your memory of this movie is going to be very clear, even if you haven't watched it for a few years. Because this world is just so vivid, and Hayao Miyazaki's creative vision is just so specific. Although movies like Kiki's Delivery Service have a very playful tone, Spirited Away is a lot more serious, I would say. It has a lot of quiet character moments, but I don't think that kids would be bored by this movie, because this movie has characters that are very memorable, and you really sympathize with these characters, with what they are going through. And although the main characters are mainly the people I'm referring to right now, I also talk about the supporting characters, because the supporting characters in this movie are also really memorable, even down to a mouse or a fly. They are all very memorable. This whole world, in fact, is memorable. Joe Hisashi's music really works in this movie too. I think this is the best piece of music that Joe Hisashi has made, and that's a lot coming from someone like Joe Hisashi. And his music is at just the top of his form, and Miyazaki's art style is also at the top of his form. So this is peak visuals combined with peak music, and the experience is just amazing. But I don't think it's just about the visuals that make Spirited Away my number 1. It's also about the emotions. Although every frame is packed with a lot of visuals, it's packed with just as much emotion. This is a movie that's just filled with a lot of emotion, and it's filled with a lot of visual detail. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie, and every single scene in this movie is gorgeous, and each scene follows up with another scene that somehow manages to exceed the previous scene. it just keeps on getting better and better. This movie is everything that's good about Studio Ghibli and more. So that concludes my 5 favorite Studio Ghibli movies list. Although I want to mention a few movies, I want to mention Ponyo because I really like Ponyo. It's a very cute movie, but I just can't seem to put it on this list because it's just not as good as these 5 movies. But still, if you watch 5 of these movies and you want to watch something more, do go and watch Ponyo. It's a very cute movie. I said that 3 times, I know, but it's really very cute. 4th time.